So, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to this BODHI session on architecting intelligent enterprises. To set the context, AI adoption is no longer the question. I think the real challenge today is how enterprises move beyond pilots to deliver trusted, scalable, and repeated value through AI. And that challenge is less about models, much more about architecture, foundations of data, governance, and culture. And that's exactly what today's conversation is about. So, Mayank, great to have you with us. Welcome to the session.
Thanks,
To
Shiraz.
start us off, could you briefly introduce yourself and your role and probably share why this topic is so personally relevant to you right now?
No, indeed, Shiraz. Thank you so much, and it's an honor to be at this event. I've seen past few events, and I've seen the lineup of the speakers. So it's an honor for me to be part of this one. So thanks once again for making me part of this. Um, my name is, as you know, Mayank Srivastava. I'm the Global Director for Architecture and Engineering at FrieslandCampina. We are one of the world's largest dairy cooperatives. If you are based anywhere in the world where we sell our products, you would have used our brands. We are in Europe, we are in Middle East, Pakistan, China, Hong Kong, and Asian countries. In my role in FrieslandCampina, I'm responsible for data and analytics and enterprise integration, and I lead the end-to-end design, implementation, and also operationalization of all data and AI use cases, but also of integration use cases, which keeps the company running. I think I've been in the world of data and AI for almost 20 years now. And I think I've seen the journey from on-prem hardware all the way to cloud, and also the world of ChatGPT, something which happened a couple of years back, and we had no clue when that happened as to what it is, and now it has become the reality and a day-to-day kind of a thing for me. And I've been personally involved in the world of data, and I've seen the impact of ML and AI before ChatGPT happened, and I can see what the value it brings in. And I think now is the time that all the investments which have been made over the years by organizations and by us personally also, it's a time when we can scale it and really drive value out of AI. Um, Personally, I'm really passionate about technology. I'm really passionate about data and AI, and also what it can do. And that's the reason I kind of spend a lot of time and really you can say exploring myself and seeing how can we leverage the investments what we have done, and how we can you can say scale those that impact in the organizations and take it to the next level.
Perfect. Thanks for that, and it's our pleasure to have you on this session. So let's set the base of the discussion, Mayank, and understand the reality of this space. Okay, I think the way I look at it, a very high level categorization could be organizations which transition from AI experiments to actual capabilities,
Mhm.
and those which remain trapped in use cases, demos, pilots, etc. Right. So, what, according to you, fundamentally separates these two categories of organizations? The ones that unlock scalable AI and the ones that remain stuck in pilots.
Yeah. I think that's a problem which has always been there in the industry even before AI happened, and I think AI has simply just accelerated that journey, and also kind of made the problem really visible now. That if you are just kind of working on use cases or piloting, it won't serve the purpose, because AI would not bring value if you're not able to scale it and make it part of your business processes now. Because earlier we had data and AI teams running in silos and somewhere in the organization, and there were a group of people who were data scientists, and they were actually kind of building ML models. Now what has happened is that AI has come out of that box, and it is almost everywhere. I think those enterprises which who are still kind of into experimentation, they will not be able to scale AI anymore if they are not looking into, and as I say, fix the fundamentals. So I think from that perspective, the first inflection point is architectural. I think what most organizations sometimes do is they treat AI as an overlay on top of the legacy systems, and the models are you can say wrapped around those brittle processes which are disconnected from real time business signals. I think that's something which has to really change. You need to see what you're doing in terms of AI, and how does that contribute to your business process, where is it really adding value. Just because you can do AI doesn't mean you should do it. If you are doing an AI use case, how does it impact your order to cash process, or how does it impact your finance process, and can it elevate those processes? That would be the first inflection point. And I think on that perspective, And the point also is that if you keep on doing these experimentations or use case driven mindset, you will have isolated wins, but you will not have a systemic drag. And that is what is needed in the organizations to really kind of drive value. So from that perspective, I think scalable AI definitely requires capability aligned architectures. I'm always a huge proponent of capability driven use, you can say, architecture over a use case driven architecture. That is there is a very different, you can say, ball game. And when you move towards a capability driven architecture, the most important part is having that platform first mindset. I think the concept of platform engineering started only from infrastructure, and I think now it has come to a situation wherein it is about a mindset which has to be there, and it becomes a platform first mindset. And what does it really mean is that you need to kind of see how does your architecture become scalable by using modular components, creating reusable components, creating an architecture which can evolve. Architecture cannot be rigid, because the market is changing, the demand is changing so frequently now, and also the AI advancement which is coming, it is changing. So you need to keep your architecture also very flexible. So that's the first inflection point, which comes in is the architectural part. I think next to that one is also about the cultural reset which you need to have in the organizations. And I always say that, before even looking into your architecture and governance, you need to kind of bring in that cultural mindset change in organizations. Because if you have the right people with the right mindset, right attitude, and right skill sets, architecture and governance will automatically happen. But if you don't have the right culture, if you don't have the right mindset, even though you have one of the world's best architecture on a paper, you won't be able to make it a reality because people would not buy into it. They would not understand the value behind that.
Okay. Okay. No, I think we'll dive deeper into these two topics later in the discussion, because I think you've hit the right spots in the first question itself. So, but as I understand, you're looking at obviously topics which are structural in nature, where you're talking about architectural data foundations,
Yeah.
capability led models, and then of course the behavioral aspect of it. Where is it culture, governance, etc. Right. So these are the two things that probably you would look at. So let's move a little and go more towards the third part of it, which is time based and sequential, right? So obviously there are multiple priorities which an organization needs to address to achieve this AI scalable kind of culture mindset success. Do you have a roadmap in mind when you think about this? Like uh, there are certain things which need to be done. Is there a sequence? And what if there is no sequence? What do you think should organizations should keep in mind when they are analyzing how this roadmap is impacted? So
Mhm.
how this roadmap would be structured. So what would impact this particular roadmap?
Yeah. I think the biggest point or the most important point before you even kind of embark upon the journey of executing that roadmap is value. Um, I think traditionally we as engineering communities, and I'm also an engineer by at heart still, and I love to code. I think we love to build things, but we need to kind of go towards a more of a value-based and AI engineering there. And I think that is one of the most important things before you start building a roadmap and creating a roadmap. Which is the part or what part of your use cases or what part of the things what you do is going to really bring an impact in the organization? So
Okay.
because the challenge, Shiraz, is that this world is moving so fast, so that you can't really kind of go into sequential mode. That you can't go like, hey, I have to kind of fix the fundamentals first, and then I'm going to pick up the use cases and also prioritize the use cases as per domains. So because everybody wants to do AI, finance, supply chain, HR, everybody has got tons of use cases. So how do you start that one? And that starts from which one of these use cases are going to make the biggest dent in terms of value for the company? Where does the most differentiation comes in? That would be my first point. Then looking into that one, what organizations must try to define is the differentiation between non-negotiables and must-haves versus nice to haves and things which you can live with. Because the point is that you can build fancy things in your product, in your use case. Do you need to build all of those things? Maybe not. Maybe first it's important that we build the use case and define the proper MVP and say, hey, let's make sure that the value is driven, but there are certain fundamentals which are non-negotiable. And for me, observability, monitoring, evaluations of AI use cases, and security. These become like the core fundamentals for those use cases, any use case. So if you ask me for the roadmap, I would start with, hey, value, where is the maximum value come in? I would start from maximum value to, yeah, minimum value, or whatever you can call it. And then from that one is, for each of those value driven use cases, what are the non-negotiables? Because that will also help you in scaling further on the use cases. Otherwise, you will start from scratch for everything. And all of this must be wrapped around, in my opinion, around platform first mindset, that if you're writing a code to deliver a use case, try to see how you can build that in a modular, reusable format so that you can reuse in the next use case. That's how I would do it. The biggest, you can say, and in that roadmap also, there are a lot of things which needs to be done. And I think the backlog is very heavy now in terms of really kind of meeting the demands of AI, and also kind of making sure it brings the impact. Because the the AI use cases, what you build, that has to be connected directly to the use cases, and then you need to make sure that your operational and analytical plane, they kind of work together, and you can go towards. So you need to work upon your event-driven architecture. You need to work upon your API architecture also, because you need to really be API ready, and that has to find some room in your backlog, in your roadmap, so that you can deliver that and also build on top of it. But the first point would be value. Where does the value come from? I'll pick that one up, define the non-negotiable fundamentals, and then have a platform first mindset and keep on building that. Because APIs are also, for instance, a part of a platform first mindset. If you have to kind of exchange information between two agents, you don't want to do it via files. You want to do with APIs. So it's like that. But and all of this around this one, the roadmap will also have space for culture, for people, for adoption. Because you could build the best use case in the world, but if nobody is using it, first of all, it won't bring the real value, but you will also not see an incremental improvement in your agentic systems or in AI systems. So your adoption also becomes part of your roadmap, and you need to have a proper, you can say, block in your roadmap to make sure you invest in there, and that you bring your people on board on these use cases.
Okay. That's actually a lot of information that you've shared right now. Uh, do you think that, obviously you've shared what you think is the roadmap, but do you think there is a context to it where industries are concerned, or in terms of maturity which organizations are currently going through, or the risk appetite which certain industries have? Do you think there is a space to play around with this? Obviously, keeping in mind that yes, value comes first, but post that, when you're talking about the non-negotiables, are they dependent on factors like maturity, industry, risk appetite, etc.?
Yeah, no, indeed. I think in the current format of AI, the risk appetite really needs to be evaluated at the organizations, for the organizations. And I think those organizations which are very highly regulated, and wherein the exposure is very high in terms of the impact they bring into the lives of the people, there you have to be very careful. And you can't just go in like, okay, I'm just going to open the doors and have 1,000 use cases. You need to have the fundamentals very strong. And AI governance plays a huge role in those industries, like pharmaceutical industries or financial industry, where you're kind of exposing your platform for via AI use cases to the B2C customers or the retail customers. The organizations which are not very regulatory driven, or doesn't really kind of bring a catastrophic impact if something goes wrong, I think there we have a more room to play.
Okay.
And also I think in the organizations which are more towards B2B with less risk, I think there you can play much more. So yes, indeed, I think there is there. The maturity is an important one. Because nobody knew 20 years back that we will have this world of AI today. And there were some organizations who invested in architecture, who invested in platform first mindset, who invested in creating that unified platform for building BI at that point of time. And then incrementally they are building on top of it. In our case, for example, in FrieslandCampina, 5 years back, we embarked upon a journey of building this unified DNA platform, what we have today. And at that point of time, we didn't even think about ChatGPT, or we didn't even know about all these things which are happening today. So, but we build architecture with that core mindset. So by the time, in 3 years after that, when the world of AI hit that inflection point, we were already ready for it, because we had baked in those fundamentals into our architecture. So, but the organizations who did not pay attention to those, even though they are non-regulated or they have lesser risk, they won't be able to scale. So now it
Okay.
is the point that they need to kind of balance between value and also kind of making sure the fundamentals are taken care of together.
Perfect. Sounds good. And but at the same time, it's not that the organizations, those who did not adopt the scalable architecture, they will not be able to catch up. They still have that space
Yeah, yeah.
to accelerate and we don't want to give them like there's no hope at all kind of
No, of
message, right?
course, of
Yeah,
course. No,
yeah,
Shiraz, of course. I think, and again, it is also about prioritizing and defining those non-negotiable fundamentals. And I think these are the organizations, and I know there are a lot of such organizations out there who can still do it, but they need to make sure that if from here, if they want to scale and have that scalable value, they should
yeah.
take care of those fundamentals now.
Okay, perfect. So let's move on to something a little more realistic. If you look at the context which you've set right now, and the non-negotiables, let's talk about the architecture foundations, right? So when I think of the architecture question, I believe it's about reshaping how the enterprise is structured and structurally designed to absorb AI at scale. In this particular context of our conversation.
Yeah.
So when you think about, or when you're talking about core architecture modernization, what do you think the approach should be for enterprises to to accomplish this, to
Yeah.
succeed in creating this core modernization?
I think the core is the data. I think by now it is very clear that AI is not a magic wand which will fix all your problems. And then there are so many memes now on internet about garbage in, garbage out with AI. You have bad data, you will have bad AI. The core architectural, you can say the first thing which I will look into it is, am I able to have a platform in my organization wherein I can integrate and data properly and have the data of a good quality, which is also being monitored, which is also being governed. That's my first important part of the whole ecosystem. Then the next one is that we have reached to a situation in AI that whatever you do on data platform or whatever do you do on top of your data, that needs, so that operational and analytical plane has to kind of interact with each other, but also you will have to, because AI is taking decisions at a very fast pace, so you need to introduce an event driven backbone, and you need to have an AI API architecture so that you can expose the real time business signals from your AI back to the core systems. I normally say it, and I also kind of joke about it, that I would drive around wearing a hoodie which says AI loves API and API loves AI. I think for me, the core fundamental would be the API architecture. If that is not there, now is the time to really invest in that and see how it can. Earlier, it was more like nice to have. Now it's a must to have for the organizations. And apart from this, I think these are the two core. And then apart from this, it is about observability. Are you able to kind of have an end-to-end observability on your system, right from the system of record all the way the system of engagement, and with all the components in there, you need to really have that. Because giving an example of agents, if an agent is taking an action, you should be able to kind of see how did the agent come to that action, but also have the whole end-to-end observability as to which systems are involved. Are the systems having good data? Are the systems able to kind of do what they're supposed to do? So that end-to-end observability and monitoring has to be there. That's the third core fundamental which has to be really there. And then the fourth and the most important one is security. Security is something which has to be really re-looked into with a fresh perspective, because we are talking about a world which has already become a reality in last year, and it is going to scale with agents and AI applications. You need to look into the security from all quadrants: your infrastructure security, data security, which is of paramount importance, your identity access management, and also the exposure which AI applications bring in. That the attack surface has really multiplied, and we talk about human in the loop, but that human in the loop is also become the attack surface now. So you need to really look into the overall end-to-end security infrastructure. So these are the core things where I would start with my data foundation, my event-driven API architecture, my observability monitoring layer, and security.
Okay. No, I think the security thing is interesting because we will address it later in the governance part of it. I think that's a key topic of this discussion as well. Uh, a question on this. You mentioned these four pillars. Do you think, and this is more about what you've observed in the industry, when enterprises are thinking about being AI ready, are they starting wrong? Are they taking a lot of wrong starts with architecture, or are they? Do you think that there is a rationale behind their approach? Do you have you seen any trend in terms of mistakes and basically quick learning kind of situations?
I think I wouldn't say it mistakes, Shiraz, because I think we are in a situation right now. It's we can't have a red pill and blue pill kind of a choice anymore, and also
Yeah,
the world is moving so fast. And if you are not moving, your competitor is moving fast. Because yeah, maybe they already have a fundamental which is very strong and they're building on top of it, or they are just building the use cases, but they will be ahead of you. One of the things which I've seen is organizations are struggling in terms of finding the right balance between value and fundamentals. How do we kind of go about with that one? There are some organizations which I've spoken to and in my network which said, "Hey, we have built a use case, we know it works, but we are not able to scale that into production, and we are not able to scale it further into other domains because they did not have the fundamentals. And while they were doing the use case, they were not able to kind of factor in for those fundamentals. So they just started building the use case. So one of the advice which I give to organizations is whenever you are picking up use case based on value, also think about, do you need to scale this? Do you need to put this into production? Do you need to kind of also replicate this success to other domains and other use cases? And if yes, take that platform first mindset together and see how you can say do that while you're building the use case. And it's a very tough playground to play in, because yeah, you have a limited amount of budgets and limited amount of time to deliver value. So how within that you can do it, it
exactly.
is an important
Yeah,
thing.
yeah. And just to extend this a little more, when you're talking about standardization versus flexibility, right? There's always that trade-off.
Yeah,
Uh, how do you decide where architectural standardization is essential for AI scale versus where flexibility should be preserved? I mean,
yeah.
is there, is there any point of view on that?
No, indeed, I think it is everything goes back to have so what we normally do is we have defined the design principles very clearly. So I think that's where we started 5 years back. We wrote the design principles, and those kept on evolving and improving as we move further. So we look into the use case, we look into the design principles, and we create an MVP first. Okay, what is it that we want to deliver in an MVP which can be scaled? And the scalability and reusability is something which we always keep in mind. But
Okay.
then we also kind of see that, hey, for example, and just to give an example, in terms of modularity, if at certain point of time, if I've got 5 objects and 5 classes and all in one Python file, and it still does the job, but it's still the code is modular within that one piece of code. Do I have time to actually kind of make it part of the MVP, that I make it modular in terms of having all the objects and classes in the right file structure? Maybe we could start with an MVP wherein we just kind of make sure that the code is modular from that perspective, generic from that perspective, and we implement that. And then we take a record of the tech debts or the things which we need to be fixed, and then find time to kind of bring it back to the right way of working in. And we always constantly, we what we say is that we constantly look into the north star as to how far are you from the north star, and then keep on adjusting that. One of the most important thing, and that's why culture becomes very important, and it's not only about AI culture. You also need to have that architecture as a mindset in the organization. If you go to business today, and in with all due respect, and also I fully understand the business perspective, is for them it is like, hey, I want my use case, I want my value, I don't care about architecture, I don't care about technology, I just need my things to be get done. But in Friesland Campina now, at this point of time, we kind of worked so hard in terms of making that architecture as a mindset that people themselves, the business domains themselves, say that, hey, let's kind of take care of that because we need to scale it further. Scalability and reusability is something which business domains are talking about. So from that perspective, I think it really helps us. So architecture as a mindset, and architecture not as an ivory tower, is also very important if you have to scale it.
And that's a great point. So, but that's a good, I think, segue that, strong architecture makes AI possible, but obviously it doesn't make it acceptable or trusted. I
Yeah.
think that statement is there, right? And that's where, probably governance and trust come into play. So I think that's a good segue into the next topic. So just to simplify things for myself, when I look at governance, I'll say, okay, who is allowed to do what with AI and under which rules? Okay, just a very simple kind of
Yeah.
definition. And with trust is, will people actually use AI outputs to make decisions? So when I look at governance and trust, right, that's the way. So on specifically on this topic, as AI moves into the core business processes, right, what governance constructs become non-negotiable?
Yeah.
It's slightly open-ended, but it's. I just wanted to understand what
Yeah.
your point of view on this is.
I think again, Shiraz, this is a topic on which we can have a discussion for the whole day. I would just pick two
Yeah,
parts out of the whole thing. The first part is the data. I think we need to really kind of ensure that we have clearly defined ownership of the data, who can take care of the quality, who can take care of the timeliness and freshness of the data, and making sure that they are able to define what AI ready data means. I think there is a lot of hype around the word AI ready data. I think I also kind of heard a lot about it in a lot of conferences in last years, but nobody knows what AI ready data means. That clear checklist is not there. So as an organization, from a governance perspective, that is the first thing which needs to be done. And the topic of who owns the data has become even more important now, because that also boils down to who owns the business process, because your AI is impacting your business process. So the ownership of the business process and ownership of the data coming out of that business process becomes very important from a governance perspective. The other side of it is when you use the data and you build the AI use case, the AI, you need to have a very strong AI governance, not because regulations want you to, because of the fact that the fact that AI has become part of your business process, which means your entire reputation is now at stake. If there is a wrong decision being made by AI, it can really dent your reputation, but also you can say break the trust people have on you. And that's a fundamental principle of almost all organizations. They want to be trusted. So that's why AI governance has to be there. So you need to be sure about all the use cases, what are being done, are they having proper guardrails, are they being monitored, are you able to explain the outcome of the AI? That is very important. The trust of the output has to be kind of taken care of it. And most important is it ethical to do it? How is it impacting people? Is it kind of crossing the lines in terms of the privacy and the borders what people have? If it is doing it, that needs to be kind of really taken care of, and you need to be very sure that you are able to classify your AI use cases in terms of high risk and low risk and no risk. You need to be able to kind of do that. Yes, regulations are there and now organizations have to do it, but that has to become a culture. It should not be driven by fear of fine or fear of getting barred from doing business. It should be really baked in into the principle of the organizations now. So AI
fair
governance
point.
and data
Yeah.
governance, in my opinion, I think these are the two, you can say, two sides of the same coin, which needs to be really prioritized in organizations.
No, those are good points, Mayank. Specifically on who owns it, you mentioned that it should be owned. Now, when we look at AI decisions or AI governance, obviously there are teams which manage the central platforms, there are domain teams, there are business leaders. You yourself are in a role which could probably own this whole process, right? Who in your should be the best would be the best team to own this, in
I
your
just
perspective?
hoped you wouldn't ask me that question, because that's one of the most controversial questions in the world of data governance. Who owns the data? I would start by saying who doesn't own the data or who doesn't own it. It's IT. IT should not own the data, and IT should never own the business process also, because IT is the core enabler of making that happen, but they should not be owning the data. And that's something which we have seen traditionally in almost every organization I've worked with. I've seen that everything starts with, hey, IT owns the data. I think the ownership should move as much as possible towards the business, with a joint shared responsibility with IT in this case. And whether it should be the CDO, or it should be the BPO owner, or the business process owner, or somebody from a particular domain, that's a different question. That's something which depends also on the culture and the capability of the organization, because it also boils down to the fact that, hey, you can say that yes, business domain should own the data, but within your organization, actually, the person from IT knows more about the data and the business process than the business person themselves. So I've seen that situation wherein there are individuals who do that. So I think you need to kind of then look into a very holistic view, and see. I think you have to see how do you kind of balance that your organization, and put the people in the right places so that they can own the data. So the ownership should move completely away from IT in terms of ownership of AI and ownership of data, towards business process owners and business domains to own the data and own the AI, and then the organization shift which has to happen, that has to be there.
Okay. And so you've talked about owning the data, owning certain things. What about the governance? Who governs it? Who
It's
decides, what's ethical, what's not? Who decides, how AI should be used?
yeah. Yeah, I think Shiraz, it's not a one-man job anymore. And I think that is also becoming very real now. What we at FC have done is we have a responsible AI board, which is a combination of people from multiple domains. So we have legal
Okay.
there, we have got HR there, we have got enterprise architecture there, and which is the initiative is run by CDO in our organization. So our chief data and analytics officer, she kind of drives that thing. I think the world is also learning and still not very kind of black and white about whether the CDO should run it or whether the CISO should run it or whether the legal should run it. I think, but what is important is that the group of all these people from various domains of the organization should be at the table to kind of decide what is allowed and what is not allowed. Because, for example, an architect can't say on his own that whether an AI use case is ethical or not. For that, you need the ethics department. You need the legal department to really come in and say it. So and also HR when it comes to about people, HR also has to be there. So it is a mixture of a lot of people. But to start with, I would definitely have HR, legal, architecture, CDO, security in that room to kind of discuss
Okay.
that together.
Okay.
And of course, privacy
So,
and GDPR and everything in Europe and other organizations also becomes important. So your data protection office
of course,
also
of
comes into
course, yeah,
picture.
yeah, yeah. And I think that's more contextual where the geographies are concerned, and
Yeah,
the kind of uh, uh, I think the kind of requirements that different governments have as well, right? So, uh, on this governance part itself, right? Now, there is always this trade-off between speed, innovation, flexibility, etc., right?
yeah,
So, how do you design what according to you would be the main design principles of designing a governance structure that enables speed and innovation without becoming a bottleneck, right?
yeah,
Because obviously governance requires that there are certain checks and balances,
yeah,
but at the same time you need to have that agility because
yeah.
and that's something I think we are seeing to an extent in the region that we live in, right? It's always that trade-off between how do you ensure speed innovation versus how do you ensure things are used in the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think absolutely. And with all due respect to all the geographies in the world,
Yeah,
and I've seen a lot of debate around EU being very, you can say, governance driven and slows down the innovation. However, I'm very happy that I live in EU and there is a lot of governance with the horrible things
yeah,
which I'm seeing around the world in terms of what AI can do. So I think governance is important, but what is important also is that we don't make governance very bureaucratic
okay,
and red tape. It should not be a red tape or bottleneck. And that's where one of the things which I'm kind of really investing my energy right now is also connected governance. And by the word connected governance, what I mean is how do I kind of ensure that the whole structure is very simplified, but also becomes part of your, you can say, your implementation life cycle. And how can we go towards a situation wherein we can convert the governance into or the principles into code. And I think that's what is important from a connected governance point of view. So it's very important that we clearly define the principles. I think not everything can be kind of black and white. So you need to have a process by which you can evaluate and see manually, okay, is this allowed, is this not allowed? But then also bake those governance points into your system itself, into your CI/CD, into your code. You need to have observability and monitoring in place to make sure that even when the use case are gone, they're into production, there are indicators coming out of your observability which can help you see whether it is in line with the AI governance principles or not. So I think that is what is important. And with all due respect again to the old structure of governance, but unfortunately though that pillar based hierarchical governance is not going to work. We need to really move towards a federated governance model. And I think the organizations which try to implement data mesh and data mesh principles, I think they might be kind of having a party right now if they have done federated governance properly by giving that ownership of executing governance in the domains and not really making it a very hierarchical pyramid based organization of governance.
right. So that's one part of what we wanted to cover, governance. What about trust? But from a business user's perspective, what does earned trust in AI actually look like? Like,
Yeah.
how is it built over time? Because trust is all about how AI is adopted, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah, I think trust is the most important pillar, because if you're not, I mean, and without naming the models and the things out here, everybody kind of has got a particular, you can say, inclination toward a certain product or a certain model for using it. And why that happens is because of the trust. And trust has to be able to kind of shown. You need to be able to prove via facts and figures and dashboards that you can trust certain thing. I think the most important thing is that first of all, whatever decision what AI makes, you should be able to explain why AI is making that decision and how are we reaching to that decision. That's the first step of the trust. I mean, even in human beings, that's how it is. If I'm doing something, I should be able to explain why I took an action and what led me to that one. And I need to be very transparent that I kind of give all the facts to you, that why I did that one, so that you can understand my perspective. And then it also adjust it that, hey, you know what, these things should not be taken into account and we should do it. So I think that is very important. Explainability of the actions, and then again, I think transparency in terms of what went into making the decision is very important. And then you should also be able to kind of identify very clearly the decisions being made, what is the impact of it. And you need to be also be able to explain the impact and transparency of those impacts and actions. So for example, if your model is kind of hurting a particular segment of customers by XYZ parameters, you should also be very transparent about it, and you should be able to take that back into account and adjust your AI systems. So it is also a
okay.
multiple quadrant of trust which needs to be taken care of, and it has to move into a way that it is not about some flashy mathematical statistical numbers, and it should be able to be kind of go into a way that people from all the domains should be able to understand. So those people who are sitting in that AI board, they're able to understand and translate those mathematical numbers into certain way. Okay, this is what it means, because otherwise no one will be able to trust the output of the AI and the action what it takes.
Got it. Okay. So just a quick note to all the attendees, in case you have any questions, could you please put it up in the Q&A section or on the chat? Uh, okay, so back to the discussion, Mang. So you basically, what I understand is obviously governance makes AI safe to deploy. Trust makes AI worth deploying. I mean, the
Yeah.
usage, right? So that sounds a bit cliched, but that came out, yeah.
And I think worth
Uh,
adopting also. I think
Worth
adoption is an
adopting,
important one.
right?
So I would say trust is very important for adoption.
So you can design the right governance on paper, right? And you can have the right mindset, etc. But without the right culture, it never works in practice. And this is, again, moving to a topic which I think is really personal to you, right?
Yeah.
Culture, engineering, etc. So let's start with the most basic one: culture versus strategy. It's the age-old concept, right?
Yeah.
It's a conflict which has been there for forever. So I'm certain that you've seen your fair share of these discussions. You've been a part of these discussions. What is
Yeah.
your point of view on this?
No, I think absolutely. And I remember I read somewhere culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Breakfast, yeah.
I think that is very important. So I mean, in my opinion, and what I've seen in not only in my organization but other organizations, it plays very important role in terms of adoption of AI. But not only of AI, I think you've also seen this in the world of BI. You could make n number of dashboards, but if you don't change the culture, if you don't kind of bring that adoption strategy on the table, people don't use it, and all the investments what you have made goes down the drain. One of the funny things about AI was that one of the place wherein it was a bit difficult to have the adoption was because it was in the engineering community, because all of us were coming in from very hardcore engineering background and we could write code ourselves. And there are a lot of engineers out there where the debate started about, hey, I can write code myself. What do I need to kind of use AI? And there was a lot of AI slop, and we were also kind of mocking the code quality what AI was writing. And that was because the culture had the element there that AI will replace human beings. The first thing what we did in FrieslandCampina, but also what I see other organizations now doing is AI is not here to replace you. AI is here to augment you, to kind of support you. So you should use AI as your partner to accelerate. Uh, to write the code which makes sense and has a lot of value, write that code wherein you think there is a differentiation. generic things, let AI generate that code. You just need to make sure that the context what you provide to the AI, that is right. So I think that's the first mindset change and the cultural shift which we have to bring in organizations, that it's not there to replace you. That's the first thing. The second thing is that there was also a bit of a shame associated to using AI, and I always say that let's not kind of shun people using AI and say, hey, you used AI for writing this. Yeah, because it makes sense. So there is no harm and there is no shame in using AI for your work. So please do, and everybody on the call, please do it. Use AI for your writing. If there are, you can say, tools out there which can help you in creating content and creating presentations and slides, please do that. I personally have a workflow for creating slides now. I take voice notes, and then I ask an LLM model to convert that into context based on my voice notes, and then I feed it into an ugly slide wherein I don't worry about the format and everything, and then I feed it into an AI system which generates the proper context out of that one. And I can definitely see an improvement in that. And you have to have, you need to have a reward system for people to use AI, and you need to have a reward for teams for simplification and reuse also of AI. So it's not only about just using AI personally. Have you simplified things? Have you transformed things? And how usable it is? And one of the most important leadership cultural change has to come in is that leadership has to protect long-term architecture and long-term perspectives from short-term pressure. I think that protection and that balance protection has to come in. uh, that's the other thing from a cultural perspective I've seen. And we have to normalize experimentation. This is a world wherein there is no precedent. So you need to learn, you need to fail fast, and we need to normalize that fail fast. We need to reward failing. We should not kind of shun failing, or we should not kind of try to shame people who fail in their experimentation or the use cases which are failing. Yes, it's always a learning. I think that's important part of the cultural shift which I see that organizations need to do.
Okay. No, that covers a couple of points which I would like to address going forward as well. You mentioned engineering, you mentioned coding. Now, but let's take it make it a little broader. What mindset change is hardest for engineering teams when moving from delivery driven to capability led models? It's all about, like you mentioned, capabilities earlier. So is there a shift, given that you yourself identify as an engineer? So
Yeah, no, indeed. I think, and I always joke about it that if um, and I normally say that we need to move away from the mindset of, hey, it works on my computer, why can't I put on production? I would say that whenever you're writing code, try to think about from an engineering perspective. If you have written a code for a particular use case in a particular domain, can another domain just use it by reconfiguring? So you need to move away from the concept of writing code to writing configurations, and that's what is the most important one. One example I can give from our context is when we built the data and analytics platform in FrieslandCampina. Back then, and it's very you can say common word being used in our organization, which is called GC. And the full form of GC is one of the worst ones which we found out. Generic component. It's a generic component. We couldn't find any other name. What it is a framework what we built which is so reusable, and all the domain teams which use it, they only write configuration. They write SQL configurations and JSON configuration, to a state that today 9,000 jobs which are running in or sorry, I think around 5,000 to 6,000 jobs which are running in our organization right now on a day-to-day basis for building the data. It's all based on same framework. All of them same way of working, same way of implementing, same way of deploying, and going from one use case to another use case. It's a matter of time. It's all about writing configuration, and that is the most important shift which needs to come in the mindset of engineers, because people write the code in a certain way and it's very hard coded, it's very, you can say, very strict and very non-modular, and there's like, yeah, it does their work, why do you want me to kind of do it? So that mentality has to change, and that's what I call as, it works on my computer, why can't I put into production mindset?
okay, okay. No, thanks for that. I think that clears up one part. The second part, which you had addressed earlier, was the leadership mindset, right? So how do leaders create space for experimentation with AI, at the same time maintaining accountability,
Yeah,
justifying sustained investment beyond pilots, but also ensuring there are quick wins which are visible? So
yeah,
it's there's just so many nuances to it, right? Because
yeah,
you're accountable to the board, you're accountable to your investors, you're
yeah,
accountable to customers. Where is this balance and how is it going to come from?
Yeah, no, indeed. And I think that's an important one because I see more and more organizations that certain point of time started to shy away from experimentation, and also innovation was being misunderstood, and that word was being misunderstood, and it was also being saying, hey, that is the group of people who are only busy building fancy stuff. And that's why the word where I started from in the beginning of the conversation, value, is very important. So in our organization, between me and my fellow architects and fellow engineers, what we start with is, what is the problem you want to solve and what value will that bring in? Even before you have identified the use case, that is the most important question to answer, and that will lead into experimentation. Experimentation is important. It's the core of innovation. You need to kind of, and you need to clearly define that problem, the value, but also the exit criteria. How, when are you going to exit from experimentation? What are the must haves that you have to kind of do it? So that's what we do when we do a proof of concept. Is we clearly define, hey, this is my exit criteria of the POC. This is what I want to test, and I want to make sure that I'm able to solve X problem, and you can say identify that I can generate Y value. And then from there, it moves into kind of an MVP, and scaling into production. Even while doing the POC, what we try to do is we try to keep that platform first mindset. And maybe even in the POC, we don't do it, but we clearly say, hey, this part of this POC can really move towards a scalable, modular, reusable component, and we can reuse. And it's also about reuse over build every time. That is also very important. So that's what we kind
Okay.
of do it as part of the POCs or
Okay.
experimentation.
Okay.
And I think
Okay.
leadership, the part where you asked about leadership mindset or leadership behavior, you need to protect your time for your people, your backlog for your people. You need to make space and time by looking at the priorities for experimentation. That's the first thing. And then second thing is, you need to celebrate failure. That is the most important part. Otherwise, people will shy away from experimentation if they feel that, hey, if I fail, I would be challenged back. That's not the right leadership mindset, and that has to kind of go away. So every time we have a failure, we say, hey, what did we learn from it and what we can improve further, rather than trying to say, hey, why did you not look into this at the first place?
That in itself requires a huge cultural change, right? Because to
Exactly.
celebrate or to learn from failure, I think especially given in a very competitive landscape where there are just so many things impacting industries and impacting businesses, to have the luxury to do that would be a really valued asset to an organization. I think that's important. So what stands out is that it's not only a technology shift; it's obviously a leadership mindset change across teams, where many transformations actually succeed or fail is not in tools, but how leaders shape incentives, behaviors,
Yeah.
decision-making capabilities across teams, right?
Yeah.
So, okay. So that's good. So let's now, I think, great discussion. Let's move and make things a little more interesting. Okay, so we have a set of rapid fire questions with the sole objective of putting you on the spot. So
Okay.
so shall we begin? Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
sure.
very few. Yeah.
Do I have a hamper?
So yeah, it's in the way.
No,
It's on the
just
way in the
kidding.
post, right? So
Let's
one
go.
business function which has the most to gain through AI. One.
Supply chain.
Okay. One business function which is overhyped where AI adoption is concerned.
No comments. I don't think so. I can answer
Okay.
that.
Half the hamper goes there. Yeah. Okay. Consumer goods, food and beverage, your industry. Top three trends defining the next 5 years for the industry.
Agents, they are definitely going to be the biggest trend, and I think that's where also the value comes in. Second trend would be people. That's where the trend will be evaluation of the skill sets of the people and helping them. You can say adopt to AI and also build AI use cases themselves. That's the second trend I feel, and the third important trend will which I personally feel is going to be is the future of human workforce. I think we are going to go into a situation wherein we will have agents being part of your workforce and reporting to you. So a manager will have n number of human beings as part of the organization, but he or she will also be responsible for n number of agents. I think that's a trend which is going
Okay.
to be real in next 5 years.
Okay. The next question: AI in organizations, is it going to impact customer behavior?
Um, Yes, I think it's going to be both ways. Customer behavior is going to impact organizations, and also the way AI is being implemented and infused in by the companies, that will also change the customer behavior.
Okay. You need to fix just one layer. Okay, you got the complete backing of the organization. You've got to select one and say, okay, this is going to unlock AI value. Architecture, governance, culture. Which
Ooh,
one would you select first?
culture. I would start
Culture?
with culture. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Uh, what are the topmost, say, let's take two, three most important skills that a workforce requires to successfully drive AI adoption at scale? You mentioned this, but just if you had to take two or three.
I think the first thing is important is understanding how AI really works. That is important. Not at the core of, you can say, understanding, trying to understand how transformers work, but really kind of understanding how it works. That's an important skill set. The second skill set, which is important, is to be able to kind of transform that learning into how to interact with AI. Many people, I've seen that, and that's something which was also kind of coaching my wife a couple of days back in terms of using AI and then writing the right prompts. So moving from prompts to context is very important. So you should be able to kind of go from prompt engineering to context engineering part. That is the second most important thing. And the third most important skill set would be to be able to kind of ensure that what you are building with AI, or when you're consuming the AI, you're able to kind of have the responsible AI hat also on, and you're able to kind of make sure that when whatever you're doing with AI, either you are building something or you are consuming AI, you're able to kind of keep that hat on. That any action which happens because of you using AI, that should not violate any responsible AI principles. So an understanding of responsible AI principles is very important.
Okay. Next one. Data as a product. Quick definition.
Wow, that's one of the toughest questions, Shiraz, in this one. I think no organization has been able to kind of really define. I think now in the context what we are in, it will be anything which generates value holistically, that will be a product, and that will be data as a product, in my opinion. Anything which doesn't drive value or doesn't generate value will not qualify as a product.
Okay. Uh, Now let's make it a little more open-ended. Like Europe playing catch-up or soon to be leaders where AI is concerned.
I think soon to be leaders.
Okay. We won't go into the details of that, but that's another conversation, right? Okay. Now a little bit more personal. Photography tip, which is personal to you. I know you're a photographer, so something to share with the people listening in.
Yeah, I'm very value centric, and I don't do things when I don't see value. And photography, the biggest value I find is whenever you click a nice picture of anybody, the value which comes out is the smile.
Okay.
So when you're clicking that picture, make it very personal to you, and also kind of try to make the person in front of the camera smile. That will bring the biggest happiness for you. I think that's
That's
what
really nice.
motivates
That's nice to
me
hear.
for photography.
That's
Uh,
nice to hear. Okay. This I think should be simple, but late night architecture, brainstorming, coffee or tea.
Chai, tea, always tea.
Okay. That then
I
I
miss the
completely
tapris of
misread
India,
it.
by the way. That's one
Okay.
thing which I miss here in Europe. Just going out and having that chai.
Chai. Okay. And the last one in this rapid fire is the catchline to describe your current job.
Um,
It
okay.
can be anything. I mean, it doesn't need to be
I
IT
think right
related
now
or
what I
anything.
keep on saying is AI is a supply chain. We need to look into AI as a supply chain, end to end, and that's what I keep on saying,
Okay.
and that's what I'm also building in my role. So my catchphrase is AI is a supply chain.
Okay, that's great. So, yeah, really appreciate those answers. I think if I may, then I can say that the rapid fire, I think you performed really well. Okay, so let's move on to I think we've got 5 minutes left, Mayank. There are quite a few questions which have come in the Q&A. I think you have access to it at all, or,
Yeah,
as well, or do you want me? I mean, whichever way you want to
yeah,
look at it, you can select three, four questions, and then
yeah.
if
I think there are a lot of questions.
there
Let
are
me
lots
just
of
go
them. Yeah,
sequentially. Rupesh is
sure.
asking, in CPG FNB, how viable is Edge AI for real-time inventory or quality control, and what architecture supports it at enterprise scale? I think Edge AI is something which is really becoming hot now, Rupesh. Do I see a value? Of course, it is very viable. It is very valuable. The core architecture component wherein I would fix that to make the value, or you can see the architecture support which is needed at enterprise scale is event-driven real-time architecture and an API-based architecture. If you really want to get that maximum value, but also depends upon what it means for your organization. If real-time is an important one, then you go for it. Otherwise, at least API-led architecture is very important if you want to gain value of it. But it's totally viable. Um, Kuldeep says, looking ahead, how do you see data platforms converging with enterprise planning tools and on a plan to enable end-to-end AI-driven planning? It is something which will become non-negotiable now. I think one of the things what we at FrieslandCampina are also talking about is the API strategy and an event-driven strategy. But we have more focus on API strategy, and we talk about ecosystem. So we don't want to have tools running in silos and doing AI in silos. We want to connect them together to make sure that the value comes in the end-to-end business process. And that's why my catchphrase is AI is a supply chain. So you need to kind of have that, you can say, convergence. Um, I think, yeah, this one is nice. Vishal is asking, with evolving EU AI Act regulations, how are you embedding compliance into your architecture and governance from day one? Very interesting one, and I'm really proud that within FrieslandCampina, our Chief Data and Analytics Officer and the Director Insights and AI, they kind of started the initiative around implementation of responsible AI. So we have a responsible AI board and we have an AI technology council, and we have clearly defined the principles and what we kind of, as I said during my narrative, also was connected governance. So we're trying to make sure that all the principles and all the guidelines can be baked in into the code and CI/CD, and that's how we are trying to embed it. And we are working on an observability layer right now, which is not there 100%, but we are working on it to make it very visible, that by looking at it we can see how the processes are working, how the end-to-end chain is working, and what exactly the KPIs are talking about. So we are also kind of in process of defining the KPIs which matter to us most. But the core principles, 6 principles of EU AI Act, those are the ones which we kind of really kind of go by with. Um, if you had to advise leaders on just one decision that determines whether AI becomes a capability or remains a pilot, what it would be and why? Dave, it would be value. If a particular pilot doesn't generate a value, and I'm not talking about value of 1,000 euros, it should be really tangible. And value is on not only about money value, but it's also about the impact it brings to your process, to your people. I would move it to scalable. You can say use case. I would scale it up. Otherwise, I would just kind of, in fact, I would actually kind of see and if it needs to be stopped because it's not worth investing. How do you bridge operational and analytical systems for real-time AI decisioning in manufacturing and F&B environments? I think this is a beautiful question, Ashok. I come from the world of early 2000 when there was an operational and systems and there were analytical systems. I think that wall is broken. APIs play a huge role in there. Event-driven architecture, it all depends upon the business and the capabilities, what are needed in a business process. If you need event-driven, then I would go for it. But APIs is something which I would really, if you ask me one thing which I would do is I would look into my API architecture to bridge that gap. You should be able to kind of have a seamless flow of data as well as decisions between these systems to help you gain value. I
One
can
more
take one
question.
last
Yeah,
question.
one last one.
Um, For enterprises, Ali is asking, for enterprises with heavy legacy systems like ERP, SAP, what's your phased approach to making them AI ready without a full rip and replace? I think that's a very interesting one. And I'm also seeing a lot of conversations around readiness of ERP for AI. At FC, what we did was we went towards modernization of ERP system. We had ECC, SAP, ECC, and now we are moving towards S4. And again, I think we have prioritized value there. So what we are really kind of trying to see is that let's first kind of migrate from legacy to the new S4 system. We are not kind of really focused on clean core at this point of time. That's the heart of our design principle. But what we said was let's go for a lift and shift, what we call as a brownfield, and then based on the value we see what needs to be switched on and what we can do with the system to in terms of AI. So we are not kind of just going for a big bang thing. We're just kind of seeing where does the value come from and taking it case by case and piece by piece. Yeah.
Perfect. I think, Mayank, we
Yeah.
are out of time now. Just at it's 2 o'clock. So first of all, thank you for a really thoughtful and practical discussion. Really appreciate this. How do I put it? A grounded perspective that you've shared, right? And I think the key takeaway, if I had to just put it, it's impossible to put it in one statement, but in two statements. Okay, let me put it in two. So AI scales when there's obviously architecture, trust, and culture, which is designed intentionally but not incrementally, right? There has to be a thought out process for it. And the second, obviously, is the real value comes in when AI is treated as a long term capability and not a series of pilots. So
Yeah.
these, I think, would be the two things which capture our discussion. So that's it. That's it from our side. Thank you so much for joining us, man. Thanks to
Thank you so
everybody
much.
else who dialed in. We hope this session gave you a few fresh perspectives that you can take back to your own roles and everyday life. Yeah, perfect. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Siraj.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.